Bruce Wayne for another one of my amazing stories. So in the year 2000, I graduated from graduate school and decided that I needed a change. And so I met a girl at the time, my girlfriend, and she had been to Hawaii, but I'd never been to Hawaii before. And so we decided, and I decided that, well, let's do something different. So we packed up everything and I moved 6,000 miles to the Hawaiian Islands. And when I arrived, I went straight to Maui. And Maui is, I know you may have seen movies about Hawaii and you've seen pictures of Hawaii, but here's what I can tell you about Hawaii. You really can't see Hawaii in pictures or in film. It really doesn't capture it. In my opinion, I've been all over the world, but Maui is the most beautiful island or place I've ever been to in my entire life. No offense to anywhere else I've been, it's just very difficult to explain how beautiful it is. And so we moved to Maui in particular, and in Maui there's 4 Hawaiian islands. When people think of Hawaii, there's the Big Island, which is really the island of Hawaii. Then there is Oahu, and Oahu is sort of the more metropolitan city. This is where things get done. This is where lots of business. This is where Waikiki is, and so people would associate sort of the Pearl Harbor. So Oahu has some of those landmark things that you would think about the Hawaiian island that you may have seen in some of the movies. On the other hand, there is this much smaller island that's called Kauai. And a funny story about that, I don't know if you remember that song, Puff the Magic Dragon, Live by the Sea, la 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 la, in a land called Hanalei. Well, Hanalei is on Kauai. And Kauai is, when they're talking about Puff the Magic Dragon, they were actually talking about smoking weed, which is, later on I learned that. And they call it Pakalolo there in Hawaii. And so on Maui is sort of a balance because the Big Island is, you have a volcanic area, you have desert areas on the Big Island. It's just really much larger than I think a lot of people realize. On Oahu, like I said, is where the business transpire and you can do a lot of shopping, etc. And everything is open for a pretty extended period of time, pretty much like you think of a metropolitan city. But on Maui would be more that look, that balance between the two, the one where you would think, well, what Hawaii used to look like. It's still not fully developed, but it's still developed well enough. And so it's just a really beautiful combination of places. I remember one restaurant, which I think it's the most beautiful view I've ever seen in my life from a restaurant. It's called the Plantation House. It's my favorite place to have a meal when you go there. And the meals are very affordable. And it's literally across from the Ritz-Carlton Hotel off of Hanohapiilani Highway. And by the way, that's the street that I lived on. It was called Hanohapiilani. You know how long it took for me to say Hanohapiilani, and then how long it took to spell it? So the spelling and words are very, very different in Hawaii. For example, there is a street, a road in a highway actually on Oahu. And Oahu is where Honolulu and Pearl Harbor is, for those of you who want to kind of get a sense of which island I'm talking about. And so there's a highway there that's called, when you see it, it goes like. Except it's not like, it's leaky highway. And by the way, the actual state fish is the humu nuku apu a'a. Good luck saying that. So anyway, I moved to Maui, and while I was there, it was absolutely beautiful there. It's like sitting in the Plantation House restaurant and having a meal. And I remember looking out, and the view is always the same, beautiful. It's sort of on a golf course, and so there's green and lush and tropical plants everywhere around you. You're sort of up in the mountain a little bit, and so you're kind of looking downward. And so when you're looking down, first of all, behind you, you can see the rest of the mountains up high, and it's beautiful. And then when you look down, you look across, and the Ritz-Carlton Hotel is across there, and when you look out, there's lots of tropical plants and trees and smells. And then there's there's in the distance, it almost looked like it's not like on the moon over there. And then the wave comes up and crashes and goes up a couple 100 feet up in the air. There's this big spray that it gives off. And then in the distance, you have another island much further in the distance that you can see. And then in the middle, in between those two islands, you can see whales breaching. It is the most magnificent view and feel, and the weather is perfect all the time. And when I say the weather is perfect in Hawaii, I mean it's perfect. I remember going there, and the first thing I asked the realtor when I was trying to find a place was, what are the good areas? Like I was thinking more coming from a big city, like where would the crime be? And he goes, "Oh, we don't do that here." He says, "You pick where you want to live based on the type of weather you want to have." So like up here, over here is a dry kind of weather, and over here, it's a little bit more windy, etc. So it's basically, it's beautiful all the time. And also at the time, this is 20 plus years ago. And when you look in the newspaper, I think it's like on the second page or third page, I don't remember, but birthdays was what the news was. So when it's your birthday, you can see someone's birthday in the newspaper. Now, isn't that much, much better than the news that we have today, where every time you turn on a news channel, it's just negative all the time? And so, those are some of the beautiful memories that I have, and going snorkeling for 4 hours and seeing turtles and, and all different type of tropical fish. It's just so absolutely amazing. So after about 6 months of being over on Maui, because I thought, well, I'm kind of retired for a minute, I sort of started to get bored. Well, I wasn't getting bored, but I just needed some intellectual pursuit. And so I decided that I was going to purchase a business. And so I found this one business, and it was over on Oahu. So I decided, well, if the business is over on Oahu, maybe I should get a place over on Oahu. But I love Maui so much that I was not going to give up my place on Maui. So at that point, I had a place on Maui, and I also got a place on Oahu as well. And it was a beautiful place that I got. It was in St. Louis Heights. If you ever get a chance, go up to St. Louis Heights when you go there. It's basically, you're over at nighttime, you can see the city lights. And in the daytime, you see the houses lower, but then you can see the ocean in the distance, and you can see Diamond Head. It's just a spectacular view. And so I bought this business. It was a motorcycle, dive shop, surfboard, scooter rental business. It's essentially kind of like a tour business, but with a whole bunch of other amenities. And so, what we do is, would rent pretty much anything you really needed to have a good time, and give people, explain some of the experiences that people can have. And what was interesting is that for me, I had never ridden a motorcycle in my life until I got to Hawaii. And so I wasn't a motorhead, but I love the business, and because I love the interaction that you saw between the people. It was literally 1 block from the beach, and it was located right in the center of Waikiki, where the Duke statue is. I considered where the Duke statue, which is the Duke, is the father of surfing, and his statue is right there in the center of Waikiki. And so my business, I could literally step out my door and just look down the street, and I can see the Duke statue right from my business. So it was a prime central location. And what was interesting about it is that there's a building where my business was located. And it was sort of this rundown building that they had some hard times in the past. And even though the economy got better, no one seemed to be able to develop the building further. So it had this rustic look to it. And so, I had that, it was a pretty big space there so I could line all my motorcycles and equipment and scooters and bicycles, etc., along that strip there. It was a pretty big strip. And so it was, and so when I bought it, I bought it as an existing business. And the guy that I bought it from, his name was Harvey. And Harvey, he did a fantastic job. He had all these different scooter businesses or similar business throughout Waikiki. And I bought the one that I thought was, the the most manageable for me, being somebody who's never actually ridden a motorcycle before, etc. And so after I bought the business, the first couple of weeks, Harvey, part of our agreement was that he was going to train me to actually, to learn the business. I'm taking over the business. And so that's exactly what happened. But while he was training me, and I'm talking about, you were making really good money at the time. I mean, you rented a motorcycle for $275 for 24 hours. And people would rent the motorcycle for, maybe 4 hours and then return it, and you could rent it again. So it was really, really good money. And that's when I really start to realize there's a lot of Japanese people on Oahu. And so 40% of my customers approximately were Japanese. And so I had to learn Japanese really quickly. So after a while, what I realized is that, hey, I pretty much, by the time I left there, I spoke what I call fluent motorcycle. So I could rent a motorcycle in Japanese. Konnichiwa, genki desu ka? And then you give them direction. Migi, iradi, and you're given direction down. And it was just completely different an experience. So within the first 2 weeks of purchasing the business, while Harvey was training me, I noticed this one local Hawaiian guy, and he was a thick. I mean, at the time when I went to Hawaii, I'm not very tall. I'm only about 5'6", but at the time I was about 220, and so I was pretty jacked at the time. And 220 is pretty good weight for somebody that size 20 years ago. I know now you have, the guy like from Game of Thrones that's like 400 pounds. Well, I like to tell people that I was big when big was cool back then for my generation. And so when I got there, I noticed that Harvey's talking to this guy over in the corner, and there's just a lot of whisper going back and forth. And it happened several times. And I saw Harvey, and he seemed uncomfortable. And so one day, so I asked Harvey, I said, "What's that about?" He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it." So one day, after maybe about 2 or 3 weeks, I said to Harvey, I said, "You guys seem like are you okay?" And the guy who was talking, I said, "Who's that guy?" And he goes, "Oh, that's Baby." And I go, "Who's Baby?" He says, "Oh, well, I forgot to, and let me describe Baby first. Well, actually, let me tell you a little bit first. So Harvey is sitting there and he's talking to Baby. Now, Baby, I would never hear his voice. Now you think, well, what's the guy's name with Baby? Well, Baby was shorter than I was. He was much shorter, but he was built like a brick shithouse. He was thick. He looked like he was born in a gym. He had these thick tree trunk, I can't say it, the Jamaican in me. It says tree trunk legs, huge arms, bigger arms than I did. I mean, this guy was jacked. And so Harvey said to me, he says, "Oh, I said, so what's the story?" And his name is Baby, I said. He says, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, what's the story with him?" He says, "Well, he's mad because I forgot to tell you something." And he goes, "Oh, I have to tell you something." I go, "What is it?" He said, "Well, I forgot to tell you that Baby belongs to the Hawaiian mob. And the mob is called the Beach Boys. And so the Beach Boys, what happened is as the city, over the years is being developed, and a lot of developers are coming in and building out Waikiki, a lot of the locals, so-called mob or organized crime, decide that, look, there's certain business models that they're going to claim for themselves because they didn't feel like they wanted a lot of the mainlanders or people from out of town or other states or other countries to come in and take over their entire island and leave nothing for them. So they formed the Beach Boys, and the Beach Boys basically ran the surfboard business. So not business, but industry on Hawaii. So if you were renting a surfboard, you had to first check with the Beach Boys to get permission to rent the surfboards, and you had to give them payments. So you had to pay them off. Every month they'd come and collect. And so we had surfboards that we were renting also, and and they also wanted a piece of our business. So Harvey had been paying them for almost 8 years, he said, before I arrived. And so by him selling the business to me, Baby was mad because he's like, "Where's my money? Did you tell this guy to pay me my money?" And so when Harvey said that to me, I said, what? He wants money? I'm like, for what? I'm like, I'm not doing that. He's like, Bruce, you're going to have to pay him. I've paid him for 8 years. I said, I didn't work my entire life to get to this point to give my money to a stranger that's trying to bully me. And by now, I guess you guys know, I don't like bullies at all. But here's the thing. I'm 6,000 miles away from anyone I know, any backup at all, and I'm on this island with this mob, essentially. Not essentially, they are the local mob, and they expect you to pay. And I said, I'm not going to pay. And then he goes, look, you don't understand, Bruce. He says, look, you're a pretty big guy. And I look at Baby and I'm like, I can take that fucking guy. And he goes, you don't understand. He says, if you beat down Baby, there'll be 6 other guys coming in, and here's the thing about local Hawaiians that you need to understand. Okay, now this doesn't apply to every Hawaiian, but I'm going to tell you my personal experience. So please, the woke mob, stay away from me. I'm telling my experience. So even though I was 220, the Hawaiians come large. They come larger and massive. Okay, and they're in shape. You may think, oh, they look kind of heavy. I'm like, no, these guys are up early in the morning. I used to see them every morning. They're out. They're eating poi. Poi is like taro, and they make flour out of it. And they're eating fish, and they're surfing every freaking morning. And surfing gets you in shape. You got to be strong to get up on that surfboard and squat. You're basically on the surfboard and you're squatting down, getting up, squatting down, getting up, squatting down, getting up. You're paddling. You're diving for your board to pick it up. So they're out there for hours every morning. So these guys, even though they might be 300 pounds, they're in pretty good freaking shape. Okay, and they're big. They're much bigger. And the thing that you need to understand about local Hawaiians that I learned, okay, and I'm not saying all Hawaiians are like this, but again, telling you my experience. The males that are there, they love to fight. Okay, so if you fuck with them, they're happy to indulge you by giving you perfect ass whipping. So don't go there and go fucking with the local Hawaiians, think, oh, they're just a bunch of pushovers. Okay, they're really nice until you piss them off. Okay, so Harvey says, if you don't pay them, there'll be like 300-pound guy coming through the back door and 3 coming through the front door, and they're gonna be fucking you up unless you pay them. So at that point, I went home that evening. He says, you need to go home and process that because you're gonna have to pay these guys. So when I got home back, I was thinking, I'm like, fuck this. I'm like, I am not going to be paying these guys because I say, once you pay him, I'm going to be like Harvey for the next however long I'm here. I'm going to have to be paying these fucking guys. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So what I did is the next day I hopped a plane and I went back to Maui. And while I was in Maui, I just left everything, like, fuck it. I'm not dealing with this. So I just left everything, left the keys. I was like, I'm out of this fucking business. And so Harvey called and he's like, what happened? Where are you? And I said, what do you mean, where am I? Where do you think I'm not there. He's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm not going to say where I am right now. So he's like, well, you got to come back. We're going to work this out. I'm like, there's nothing to work out here. Dude, you're doing business with the fucking mob. And you forgot to mention that to me? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, this is not going to end well. And so the series of phone call back and forth. He's like, I'm trying to talk to them, but Bruce, you're going to have to pay him something. Can you pay him this? Can you pay him that? I'm like, I don't want to pay him anything because I know what's going to happen. Once you start this, you're always going to have to pay. And he's like, no, it's not like this. I'm like, how many years have you paid? He's like, well, 8. I'm like, have you stopped paying? No. Well, that means you're going to hand me off your problems. I'm not doing that. So then, one of the times he called, and what I realized, good night's sleep or a couple nights sleep and some distance sometimes give you some perspective. And one of the things that I picked up on really, really quickly is that even though the local Hawaiians that I encountered. And like I said, they don't represent all Hawaiians, but I'm giving you the mob. The mob is the underbelly of most places that you go to. They don't represent the people in general. So I'm not dissing my fellow Hawaiians. I love Hawaiians. So one of the things that a good night's sleep can do is give you some perspective. And so I realized, look, I don't know anyone here. But I can't allow these guys to force me to start paying because it's never going to stop. So one of the things that I discovered about the locals there, the local Hawaiians that are in this mob, is that you might be tough when you're on the island of Hawaii, but they are scared of going to traveling to places where they've heard about gangs and shooting and stuff like that. Because at the time, there weren't a lot of guns in Hawaii per se. There's an underbelly there, but it's different. It's like you'll get beat down, and I'm sure people disappear from time to time in the pineapple fields. But you'd have to be really, really, really involved on some level to have that level of action happen to you. And so what I realized is that if you mentioned that somebody from the mainland was going to come down, like the mob or a gang coming down from the mainland, that would create fear for them, because the fear of the unknown and things that they've seen on TV. I felt like they felt like, oh, I don't think we can handle that kind of heat. So what I said to Harvey, I said, look, my father lives in New York, and he actually is involved in the mob. And I called him. He's involved in the Italian mob in, La Cosa Nostra in New York. He's been involved for a long time with them. And, they call him like the crazy Jamaican because he shot people along the way. And I said, look, when I told my father that the mob down here was trying to shake down his son and they're trying to hurt me down there, he was pissed as fuck. And he said, give me 24 hours. I'm going to send a team down there to take out these fucking guys for you. And so Harvey's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, no, we're not playing that shit. I said, these guys threatened to fucking hurt me. Okay, that's what you're telling me. Okay, that means my life is in danger. So therefore, if they threaten me, I take a fucking threat very seriously. And so that's what's going to happen. And he's like, you're going to call that off. I'm like, it's too fucking late. I said, once you put an order out, once the mob from New York put a order out, these guys are coming and I can't fucking stop them. I said, you all should have thought about that before you start fucking with people that you don't know. I said, you think I came here alone by myself? Yeah, but they didn't know that. I said, I got backup. Okay, and these are some brutal motherfuckers that are coming down here. So, hey, you know what? They shoot me, that's fine. But understand that if they shoot me, they're gonna kill every one of those motherfuckers. They're gonna shoot their family. They're gonna fucking shoot the dog, okay? So you understand that. And so Harvey got nervous. I was pretty convincing at the time. And I know it sounds outlandish now listening to it, but at the time it was pretty convincing, and I said it with a whole lot of conviction because, hey, you know what? When you're scared of getting fucked up, you are very passionate at that point. So Harvey called, says, let me see if I can work this out. And so he called, back and forth call, and he called me back. He says, I figured it out. I says, I fixed it. They're going to leave you alone. I said, you don't have to worry. There's not going to be any trouble anymore. And I go, what did you do? He says, well, I just told him you're not one of those regular guys they can shake down. That you're some fucking crazy Jamaicans. I told him, Harvey said, I told him that he's a fucking crazy Jamaican and you don't want to fuck with them because they're crazy. And if you fuck with this guy, it's going to be a problem. And so I don't know what he told them, but whatever he did and whether they accepted it or not, I know that they did accept it because when I got there, I didn't have to pay him anything. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Harvey paid them out of one of the other business. I don't know. I don't give a shit. I didn't have to do it. So I got back there and I started to do business and I was left alone. I saw a baby came by and, he'd wave and whisper and walk along. He didn't say too much. He was not a mean guy, but he was intimidated, and that was the whole point. And actually, Baby was in a lot of, from what I understand, he was in a lot of movies and films because he just looked the part of an enforcer. And so, so after that, I was left alone. But I want to tell you another story as well. So when I just got there, I noticed that I was out front there just because I'm very sociable, and so I'm interacting with the people going by, and I'm talking to a customer, and I look up, and there's these two big 300+ pound Hawaiians walking by. They're going to the beach, with their surfboard, and they look over, and the guy looks at me, and he's at a distance away from me that I can't hear what he's saying, but he's clearly looking at me, and he's like cussing under his breath, like fuck that guy, look, and he's angry looking at me. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, at first I was like, I didn't think it was for me. But then that happened like 3 times that day where the guy passed by and he looked over and he's cussing and he's looking at me, and I'm thinking, what the fuck did I do to this guy? He seemed like he's totally pissed off at me. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to have any enemies here. So let me see if I can figure out, maybe I did something to offend these guys. It was 2 of them. I'm like, let me call them over and see if I can squash that shit. And so one of the time when they're both coming by, I looked over at them and I went, come here, can I, I said, I waved for the signal for the guy to come over so I can talk to them. And so the minute I did like that, a guy stormed across the street, both of them, and they're ready to fucking get in a fight, and they're in a fight stance, and they're cussing, what the fuck, they're cussing and threatening, we're gonna fuck you up, and I'm going, what the fuck has happened? And then all of a sudden, I think Harvey was there, and a couple of the locals came over as well, and let me tell you what I did, what I thought, what I did, but what I communicated. So there's what's called the stink eye, in Hawaii. It's where if you stare at someone too long, and it's in a lot of culture, but it's very much in the Hawaiian culture. If you stare at someone too long, you're gonna piss them off. It's disrespectful. And so with me just kind of looking at, because I'm sitting in front of my shop looking out, so I'm looking at everybody going by. I'm friendly as shit, and I'm I'm having a good time. Aloha, konnichiwa, ni hao, etc. And I'm, because by the way, it's lots of Japanese is the majority on Oahu, Filipino, Korean, and whites are a minority there on Oahu, and there's hardly a lot of black people there. So what happened is that I saw these guys walking by, and apparently I was looking over, and that me and my friendliness was looking at them and looking over, not in any particular thing, but just kind of people watching. But for them, they're like, what the fuck is this guy looking at us like that for? And then they walk by again, and I'm looking again, and they're like, does this guy have a fucking problem? He keeps staring at us. That's what they're thinking. And then the third time they go by, and I'm looking at them, because essentially what I'm doing is I'm giving them the stink eye, which means that you got a fucking problem is what I'm saying. Yeah, I want to get into it with them. I'm being disrespectful. And then when I went, come here, that meant you want to get into it? So I'm disrespecting them, and now I'm telling them, come on over, motherfucker, let's get into it. So they came over ready to fight. Of course, and I'm like, there's 2 of them, okay, I think I can take one for sure. I'm not sure about 2 of them, it depends, and so I'm giving myself some distance, not in the back of my head, I'm thinking, do they, I'm remembering what Harvey said to me, which is, if you hurt one of them, 6 of them are gonna show up. So I'm thinking, fuck, even if I get lucky and I knock out these motherfuckers, which it's hard to fight 2 people at the same time. So bullshit for all those movies that you see guys and they're beating up everyone at the same time. No, in real life, you probably get one and then the other one is gonna fuck you up. And so I'm thinking, well, if I got lucky and I can hit one and keep my distance, even run, and kind of do what I got to do to kind of, and to isolate each one of them. Maybe I get lucky about it. But at the same time, you know, a number of locals and other people showed up, and then I'm like, I don't know what this is about. And then that's when they explained to me that, look, Bruce, you know, this is what you were doing. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, my bad, man. I didn't mean any of that. And so, I apologize for that. And then, you know, they weren't too happy about it, and they kind of left, but kind of grumpy, and they left the scene. And so, you know, still when they walked by for several months, it was the same thing. You know, you can tell that they weren't happy that I was there. And one of the other thing is that that particular place that I had, the surfboard business was owned. They had owned that spot, from what I understand, years and years ago. The Beach Boy, I think, owned that building. I think I vaguely remember. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that they had something to do with that building, that spot where my business was. And so they felt like somebody came in and kind of took the business from under them. And then eventually, like I said, it was a rustic building, so there's nothing in there. So they lost the building, and so they lost that spot. And so that's how Harvey got the spot in a section of it. And so that was the deal. And so they were resentful that, well, that's our spot. And so any business that's there, that's our money. And for the longest time, you know, Harvey would say, you know, Bruce, they want the spot back, man, because he kept on talking to them. I'm like, well, you know, that's their problem. I'm like, they can pay, you know, if they want to buy it, they can buy it. But, you know, that's not my problem. So then what happened was, after a while, that pressure of them wanting back a piece of it, they're like, you know, they started to push a little bit more pressure from the mob. And they're like, look, Bruce, you don't understand. They want that business. And if you don't, you know, there was this downstairs section that they used to use. That's where they used to repair their surfboards. It was just a good little area that they can, you know, whenever you rent a surfboard, you can hit a rock, hit something, the surfboard chips, and then you have to repair it. And it costs a lot of money to repair it. So surfboard repair is very lucrative there on Oahu, or anywhere, I would assume. And so they wanted back the business of the repair and the rental, and especially that spot, and because it was just a good manufacturer area to do that. And Harvey kept on saying, look, Bruce, you're gonna have to give up that downstairs section to them. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, look, either you give them that section, or they're gonna come in, they're gonna take everything from you. And I'm like, and so we're like, you know what? And this went on for a while, and the pressure was building. And finally I said, okay, fine. You know what? Let's give them the downstairs section. Just tell them I'm like, fuck it. I don't give a shit about surfboards. Okay, you can take them. They can take that whole section downstairs, and they can use that space to do whatever they want to do down there as far as surfing is concerned. Just leave the motorcycles, leave the scooters, leave the tour business alone, leave all the boogie boards, leave all those other things. That's my business. They can go down there and they can do all the repairs that they want, and I'll just leave the surfboard alone because I just don't want to get into that shit. Okay? It's just too much heat that comes with it. So for a while, for about 6 to 8 weeks, or maybe it might have been 12 weeks, they took over that section down there, and they were using it, even though it was on my dime. I was paying for the property, okay, for the lease for that property. But, you know, look, I got the mob off my back, and so they're down there, they're doing the repair, and Baby's down there, and he's with those other locals that are doing it, the Beach Boys. But then a funny thing happened, and this is a lesson that I learned from this experience. So the thing about running a business, as most business owners know, especially a retail business right in the middle of downtown where you're renting surfboards. If you think about it, surfers are up really early in the morning. I'm not sure if you're not a surfer, maybe you don't understand this, but surfers are up like 5 o'clock in the morning. The minute the sun is up, these guys are out there and they're surfing, you know, sometime all day. They have different points in the day, depends on what part of the island they're going to surf. And so, you know, that means that they got to come get the surfboard, which means that Baby has to get up, and his team They have to get up early to be there to rent out the surfboard. Okay, and if the guy drop off the surfboard and it's damaged, they got to repair that surfboard to get ready for the next renter that's coming through, etc. So it's long days. It's 12-hour days from sunup to sundown, every day, 7 days a week, because it's a Waikiki, and Waikiki never sleeps. Basically, it's open 7 days a week. It's a vacation destination, so there are no day offs. So I watch them down there, and day after day. And part of the thing is that the way that it works is that, once they rent out your surfboard, then there's gaps throughout the day. So it's not like people are coming all day. There are different ebbs and flow throughout the day, just like a retail store would be, but more so because once the people take the surfboards and leave, you're kind of there for a couple hours, and then it's sporadic. And so that means you have to be there all the time. And for me, what I figured out very quickly is that most people, when they're renting scooters and they're going on a tour, etc., they're renting a motorcycle out like a Harley Davidson or a sports bike, they're coming in and they're getting it first thing in the morning, and they're gone all day or till the next day. So basically, after about 1 o'clock, I realized from about 1 to about 5 o'clock, there's nothing going on. And so rather than sitting around waiting for the sporadic person to come in to rent at 2 o'clock, I just decided I'd rather take that time. I was financially independent, so I didn't really need the money that much, and I was making a boatload of money. So I decided, you know what, screw it. I'll just close the business down from 1 to 5 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock, I'll just have my employees go and receive the equipment back, check them over, and then park them, etc., and lock them up. And so I really just, when I showed up at 5 o'clock, I was just checking on a few things, and that's it. I was gone for the day. So basically, my day was 9 a.m. in the morning, or I would get there probably about 8 a.m. in the morning, maybe about 8 o'clock in the morning, and then set up everything. And then by 1 o'clock, my day was pretty much over. So I'd go snorkeling for 4 hours a day. I would go to the gym, I'd work out. So it was just so awesome, that experience. So while I was gone and enjoying myself, I'd come back and notice that Baby and his group that was down there, the Beach Boys, some of them, they were down there and they were just passed out sleeping. Because what was happening is that being there that many hours, day after day after day, really began wearing on them. Because what they didn't realize is it's a lot easier to go around and collect money from hard-working business owners, but it's a lot harder to actually run the business yourself. And while there were other locals there in the Beach Boys that did run successful surfboard business, these particular guys were the enforcers, and they didn't fucking work. They just went around and collect. So they were not used to running a business. And so after a while, I just watched them, and it started to become very comical to watch them, because they were struggling. They were dying on the vine down there because they just couldn't run the fucking business. And eventually, so Harvey came back and he told me, he says, they're not doing too well down there. I go, good. Now they know what it's like to actually run a business. That's why a lot of time when I see these terrorists and they take over a country and they're like, hey, we're going to take over this country somewhere in like Afghanistan or whatever, or when ISIS did it, I just said, hey, you know what? The thing about it is that wait till they have to run the country. When people are going to ask questions like, where's my health care? Where's the food? Where's transportation? Where's medicine? And they can't deliver. It's easy to just pull a gun out and shoot at someone. It's a lot harder to govern because it's a lot more complicated. So eventually what we did was I wrote up a letter, and because Harvey said that if the property manager showed up and saw these guys there, they're going to think, who are these guys? And then I think it's going to get pretty messy, and you could lose your lease. You could lose your business. So we decided to, put together a fake letter and send it to them and say, and I said, baby, these guys, they, from the property manager, they're really upset that you guys are here, and they're going to call the FBI to get involved. It's going to get messy. And I say, you really don't want that to happen. So I told them, I said, you're going to have to leave. And they're like, what do you mean you got to leave? And so I showed them the letter, and I say, see, that they're asking questions, man. And, it was a bluff, of course, again. But here's the funny thing about it. Baby went, well, what do you mean? They're saying we have to leave? Give me the phone number. I'll call them. Where are they located? We'll go down and have a chat with them. And I'm thinking, oh, fuck. This could blow up in our face if they go down there and start beating down these property managers down there and then find out that we're lying. But, I just kept my cool, and he looked at the letter for a while, and he looked at it, and I kept on fast talking, and he goes, oh, okay then. Because they were exhausted. They needed a way out. They needed to save face. And so this was a perfect opportunity. And with that, they left. And so it was like, got the building back. And then one day, actually, one of the locals asked me if he could park, he parked the car. He asked me, could he park the car right on the street right next to my business? And I said, no, you don't want to park it there, bro, because if you park it there, they're gonna tow you. I said, why don't you pull the car up on my property that I've rented and park it here? That way I know it will be fine. And so he did exactly that. And then after a few hours, this police officer showed up, and I noticed he's given the car a ticket. So I go over to him and I say, excuse me, sir, why are you giving the car a ticket? He goes, well, he's illegally parked. I say, he's not illegally parked. He's not on city property. He says, well, he can't park there because that's a business property. I said, yeah, it's my business property. He's not on the regular street over there. I said, your property is there. I said, my area is, I pay for this area. And he's arguing. I said, and I said, no, I said, you can't. And so it became a shout and match, because I'm like, you can't park. You can't give this car a ticket, sir. I said, this is not your property. I said, this is not government property. Okay, this is my property. This is my business. You can't be coming on my property to try to give a ticket for a vehicle on my property. And so then, actually, while that was happening, there are some locals that live in a building, right? There's a hotel building that's sort of like an apartment complex, right overlooking, that they can look down and see what's going on. And so they looked out the window and they could see what's going on. And a number of other people, it was kind of loud. And so there was a fairly decent amount of people that were watching the thing, but I didn't realize that. And so afterwards, the cop gave up and left it alone and walked away. And then what happened is that Harvey told me that some of the locals had watched what I did, including the guy that was well connected. And that, I stood up and I kept my word and I protected his car from being towed. And they thought, this guy's a pretty good guy. And after that, they left me alone. They'd walk by, hey, Jamaica. They'd just yell, hey, Jamaica, what's up? And so after that experience, I started to get along with pretty much everyone in Waikiki. And, it's sort of like it was a hazing or initiation. And so I was in, and they just left me alone, and I got along with them. I got along with Baby. I got to know Baby very well. We became friends. It was pretty cool. And years later, every time I go back to Hawaii, I'd see Baby, hey, Baby, what's up? And so, Baby had eventually left that business after a while. I guess he was getting old, and, the times were changing. And the Beach Boy eventually got pushed off that beach there because I think the mayor got involved and something like that. I can't remember. But I got to know all those guys, and they were all pretty chill. And like they said, the rest is history. Now when I go back, Baby passed away several years ago. And, much respect to you, Baby. But I actually still see one of the other guys, and I stop and I always say hello to them because I felt like, hey, you know what? It's just a moment in time. And this is 20 plus years ago, 20, 25 years ago, might have been even a little bit longer by now. And that's just my experience with with my Hawaiian experience. By the way, you need to check out Real Bikini Fitness, ladies. Ladies, our Real Bikini Fitness series is off the chain. Okay, the person that we hired to do the series is a former national bikini fitness champion. At the time that she filmed this, she was the national bikini fitness champion. That was not that long ago. Just very, maybe about a year or two ago. And so she's gonna show you exactly what she did in order to get in shape for competition. So this is like, she's gonna show you step by step. There's 4 fitness levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. They're very comprehensive. She goes over everything with you. She's precision, she's beautiful, she has a perfect physique. I think you'll love the way Barbara actually presents the training. So look, here's what I say about Real Bikini Fitness. You can go onto Instagram and find some Instagram model, and you can go to somebody who's a personal trainer, etc. That's fine. But here's the thing. If you want to look fantastic in your bikini, doesn't it make sense to learn from the actual national bikini fitness champion? So this is not just somebody, she doesn't even like Instagram, but she's so disciplined about what she does. So if you really want to understand how a true champion does it, then check out Real Bikini Fitness, our entire series. It's pretty inexpensive. And that's really all I want to say for today. Don't forget to like my channel, subscribe to it, and also to download our Easy Weight Loss app. My name is Bruce Wayne, and thank you for watching. See you on the next episode.